So Encanto is pretty different to the typical formula that Disney follow with their animated movies, which is worth bearing in mind. But that being said, there are definitely loads of talking points and loads of things to learn from this film. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, Lifestyle Critic. I hope you're having a brilliant day. So in this video we are going to be reviewing Encanto, which is a computer animated musical fantasy comedy adventure movie that feels a little bit more aimed at kids, yet has really powerful themes that adults can definitely learn from, and is Disney Animation Studios' 60th production. And it does feel a little bit different to the typical formula that they follow with all of their fairy tale movies with a big larger-than-life villainous character, this time instead focusing on a family dynamic and all of the pressures of perfectionism that comes with it. So like I said, slightly different to the typical formula, but a lot of enjoyment to be had, and like I said, a lot of lessons to learn from this movie, and I'm going to be breaking it all down for you in this movie review. So Encanto is focused and centered around this magical candle that grants the Madrigal family with superpowers, for example, super hearing, super healing, super strength, and shape-shifting. Unfortunately though, one of the members of the Madrigal family, Maribel, wasn't granted with any superpowers, and I absolutely loved all of the conflict that the movie was exploring as a result of this. For example, the character feeling really rejected, the way in which the rest of her family are treating her, and the way in which the rest of society within this area is treating her as well. I thought it was so fascinating. Yet, this character has so much love and devotion and loyalty towards her family, so she stays with them, even though she is living in slightly difficult circumstances. I just absolutely loved all of the focus that they had, and it was super relatable as a result of it. However, as far as the storyline is concerned, one day this character has a vision of their magical house breaking, which nobody else can see, and so she goes on this mission to try and save it from it breaking down. Now, like I said, from a positive point of view, this storyline was super relatable from loads of different dynamical points of view. For example, from this character's perspective, you can really understand and relate to her in terms of her feeling really excluded, like I said, in loads of different aspects of her life, yet putting a massive smile on her face and trying to deal with it in the best way that she can. Also, the concept of arranged marriages is explored in this movie, and the thing that I think everybody can relate to is just the pressures of perfectionism and trying to keep appearances and trying to cover any faults so that everyone that's looking into you from an outside perspective is thinking that you're really perfect, which I just thought was so fascinating. All of the superpowers as well are looking really, really cool. Everyone is loving superpowers, as obviously comic book movies are really, really massive, and just seeing that injected in this world in a really unique way is really, really cool. All of the musical numbers are really, really great in this movie as well. And just the magical house, I feel like everyone would want to visit this magical house, as it really does come to life. It has its own personality, and the Maribel character is really connected to this house as well. And also I feel like it's really interesting from an immigration point of view, as there are really interesting lessons in terms of understanding things from other people's perspective. And on that point, I think that theme is just so prevalent across this movie, just really trying to focus and understand and relate to another person's perspective instead of just looking at things from your perspective, which I think is really, really great. However, from a negative point of view, like I said, it is very different to the typical Disney type movies, so it doesn't really have a big larger than life type villain, which I think is fine. I think it's great that they're doing something a little bit different, but if that is what you're accustomed to and that is what you're expecting, it is going to be very different to what you're used to. Also, the twist is super predictable. You really could see it a mile off, and whilst it does have themes that are definitely focused and centered and appealing to adults, ultimately I do feel like it is a bit more targeted towards kids. And on that point, I feel like it's very similar to the recently released Luca movie, which does feel a little bit smaller in scale than the more grandiose, bigger, more adventurous movies that Disney has created. But you know, that being said, from a storyline point of view at least, it is very, very compelling. So from a cast and characters point of view, whilst there are a large number of characters in this movie, only a few of them get focused and really developed. So let's talk about them now. So the first one, of course, is Maribel Madrigal, played brilliantly by Stephanie Beatriz. And like I said, she is really, really relatable. For example, in terms of her really being rejected, both internally and externally. And as this person was the only one out of her whole entire family that wasn't granted a magical power, you can just really relate to her. And I feel like Disney do such a good job in really focusing and really pulling out all of those emotions, yet at the same time she has such a sparky positive attitude. So it's really, really endearing and is a great lead character to really lead the way in this film, as you really are with her and all of her adventures that she goes through. Also, I really like the fact that she is the only person that really has the strength to really speak up and really stand up for herself, and also stand up to her grandmother that is just constantly putting so much pressure on all of the other family members, and also she is ultimately always trying to do the right thing. Speaking of which, we next have the grandmother character, and similarly you can really understand where this character is coming from as well, as this character has been through so much, as she had to flee her home as evil people were totally destroying her previous village. She then lost her husband, who was trying to defend all of the villagers, and then she was granted this magical gift, and so just wants to do anything and everything that she can do in order to be really grateful for it, to ensure that she doesn't lose this, and also the pressure that she now has and all of this burden that she has taken on in terms of ensuring that this new village is always running perfectly, with her magical family being at the centerpiece of that. And I feel like even though she can be villainous at points, you can really understand this character's perspective. And I just feel like from a character development point of view, they've really written all of these characters really, really well. Next up, we have another ostracized character member, Bruno, who was made to feel like a villain, especially as he was able to tell the future with his visions. And I just feel like it's so interesting, all of the mirroring. Even though they are very different characters and have gone through very different experiences, there are some parallels between the Bruno character and the Maribel character, and I really love how both of these characters are written in a way that, again, you can see things from their perspectives, and just the storyline narrative on these particular characters is really, really good. I mean, of course, like I said, there are other characters, for example, a sister who has the ability to create flowers, and she has a really important decision to make, and another ceremony of another cousin that's going to maybe get a door as well. But I just feel like they weren't as well developed as these core three characters were. So from a visuals point of view, honestly, this movie is absolutely outstanding. Such a spectacle and a true masterpiece. I mean, it's very, very colourful. All of the musical numbers in this movie are really, really great. And on that point, even though it is different to the typical standard formula, from a Disney fairy tale perspective, from a musical perspective, it is very, very Disney, and it does come alive, quite literally, in a brilliant way. And like I said, there's loads of superpowers in this movie. All of those look absolutely spectacular. And it is very centered around this magical house. Each of the rooms that all of the magical characters have go into their new wonderful space. And that's kind of how they contain everything, even though it is basically centered around this house. But you know, the Casita house adventure that all of these characters go on is really, really brilliant. So from a visuals point of view, this movie is absolutely incredible. So from a comparisons point of view, I think this movie is very similar to Luca, Sol and Vivo in terms of really focusing on diversity and being very different to the typical fairy tale type storyline. On that point, I would say that this movie isn't as good as Aladdin, Coco, Frozen, Mulan, Raya the Last Dragon, Moana and Onward, but I do think it's a lot stronger than Bolt and Lilo and Stitch. So overall, I did really, really enjoy Encanto. You know, from a musical spectacle point of view, this movie is absolutely outstanding. It has Lin-Manuel Miranda doing all of the musical numbers, and of course he's become really prolific recently with In the Heights and Tick Tick Boom as well. And you can really feel his blueprint in this movie, which is really, really great. I mean, I did expect a little bit more from this movie. And like I said, it is very different to the typical Disney formula. I mean, it's also a little bit smaller in scale and a little bit more targeted towards the kids market. But like I also said, this movie has loads of great lessons to be learned, which makes it really, really stand out. And so for all of those reasons, I'm going to give it a solid 6.5 out of 10. Now I'd love to hear what you thought of Encanto, so please let me know in the comment section below. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in my next video.